as soon as quarantine hit for the first time back in 2020, I believe it was March, I was listening to a podcast and it talked about two people coming out of this quarantine. It was going to be the person that further developed themselves, learned a new skill, or was just preparing to come out of that quarantine. And the other person was going to be the person that was sitting on the couch eating potato chips, playing video games. They were also going to be waiting till the end of the quarantine, but they were just going to walk back into the corporate sector without any further development. And that stuck with me for a couple of days, actually 3 days. After the third day, when I woke up, I had this feeling and I reached out to an old mentor of mine and asked him to connect me with some developmental programs. And WiLD was one of them. So I had sat in on different programs or leadership development spaces, and the energy and the people, not only that own and manage and operate WiLD, but the people that are in the WiLD space, all of the different entrepreneurs, all of the different, all of the different spaces and sectors that there is in WiLD all over the world. That was amazing too, is seeing that people are tuning in from all over the world to a space like this, and quickly chose WiLD. And after a few experiences of the WiLD experience, the Friday conversations, and the changes that were happening in me it wasn't just that, it was wild. So, and after I just continued to dig in and get challenged, basically I was being challenged from where I was to this new place and space. And after about 3 or 4 months, I started implementing some of the ways that WiLD talks with people, some of the strategies, some of the, remote technology was huge. And the way WiLD was doing it was just cutting edge. It was like, wow, they're doing it like this. So then I implemented that with our sales team, and we started meeting regularly. And I started taking bits and pieces of how the Friday conversations are ran. And here we are about 1.5 years later, and we have regular Tuesday meetings, Tuesday WiLD conversations just within our group. And they've changed the culture. They've transformed people just individually and collectively. And one of the biggest things that I've taken away from the development is that my development will increase their development, which in turn, the byproduct of that is them leading at a bigger capacity, but also in a pandemic year, our company had the most profitable revenue year, as well as the most revenue generated within our organization. And I can only say and argue that is because of the development of the people. And none of this development is driven by sales or numbers. It was all people development. It was all investing in who we are and why we're doing what we're doing and how we're doing it. So that has just been incredible. So for me, it's like, I want to continue to dig in and understand what is out there. How can I lead at a bigger capacity? The biggest things, and Daniel, you taught me this, one of the biggest things is not, the best way I could describe it is not sit across the table, if you will, from the employer or the other leader. Sit alongside with them and walk with them in their journey as they develop. And that has been tremendous and significant in the change of not only me, but them as well, because they see me walking alongside of them, co-owner, sales director, whatever the title is, right? Leader. They see that, and that built a stronger relationship between the employee and myself, which now they want to go up to bat, so to speak, for me in a different way than they did before. And the other thing that I've learned with WiLD is how important it is to ask questions, because asking questions is something where they feel like they have a place and their feedback is important. And that answer to the question sometimes is deeper than the 4 walls of Prycore. right? It gets personal. They talk about other relationships. They talk about struggles. The questions sometimes are very open-ended, intentionally for that reason. But then when you get that response back, it's now the relationship has gotten deeper. So, and I always, and let me see if I can remember this quote. So, questions lead to answers, and answers determine how you lead your life, or live your life, rather. It's just something, you ask them the question, they process it, they say it, and they hear themselves say it. Now it's going to be a way that they lead and they move. So I think that's how the phrase goes. But anyway, that's been tremendous, and that helps me engage with them. I'm a lot more intentional, and I'm also involved with what they're doing. And I'm happy to say that it's outside of the four walls of Prycor. And sometimes that's good, or most of the time that's good, but sometimes it's bad too, because now you've built that relationship with them where they have something going on outside of the four walls of Prycor. You feel it. It's a little bit deeper because of the relationship that you built. So
what would you say, Wiley, to a leader in an organization like yours who is listening to this and saying, man, I don't know, I think business is business and what's personal is personal, and we ought to separate those things, and it's just, I don't know about this, what Wiley's saying, where we got a leader who now where there's like business is business, and they're kind of they're not sure about that answer. They're like, what would you say to somebody about the integration of that kind of that whole person into a business like Prycor, but somebody who's saying, I don't know?
Yeah, well, quite honestly, I was that person. I was that person thinking, I don't know about this. And as you evolve in your development or leadership and managerial skills, you understand that they're one and the same. You are at Prycor, and when you have conversations, when you ask questions, that sometimes those answers are personal. Sometimes they're work related. Most of the time, I think initially will be work related, but ultimately that turns into something that you could lead by and from, because you understand that person. And when you understand how that person thinks, their calling, their purpose, their direction, their motivation, so much changes. Where when you're not asking those questions and you're just managing or leading, even if you're a good leader, but you're just leading from skill, you're going to hit a ceiling, and you're not leading to increase performance, if you will. Like, that's not my intention, but the performance will stop at some point if you're leading just for skill as opposed to development, possibly of that skill, but of the person as well. With that, one of the things that I always encourage people is the feeling and emotion that you have before you're about to do something that you think is outside of your comfort zone is exactly why you should do it. And what I talk to a lot of people about on the Make Moves Monday is, how did you overcome that feeling and emotion? Because we all get it. Nobody, I don't know if this is proper English, nobody doesn't get that feeling. But it's the far and few people that take that step that are on the other side, that are actually doing something, that weren't paralyzed or handicapped or prohibited by that feeling and emotion to stop them. Yeah. And I think that's so key.